Good afternoon, everybody. This is Don again, and it is time for episode 49 of Practical Reality. It is a Sunday afternoon, kind of cool out there. So and I'm nice and comfortable here at home. So I decided to just hang out and make the video from here. I know I'm sort of betraying my principles by not going to the park and making the video, but I'm sure I will be doing that and returning to the park when it gets warmer outside. But today I just figured I'd hang out and make this video. I'm working from a script. That's another reason why I'm sort of here with my notes to be able to refer to them easily in this setting. So I wanted to talk about something that I consider to be incredibly important as we enter 2026, and that is why morality still matters. And the reason that I consider this to be such an important topic to talk about is because what we are being shown on a daily basis is such incredible examples of immorality by the current leadership that I think it's easy for a lot of people to assume out there that morality doesn't matter at all anymore. And I think there are also people out there who have completely given up on morality and look at life as a game of predator versus prey, where their only objective is to make their life better, meaning basically help them get more money and be more financially secure without regard for the method in which they use or for the effect that it has on other people. And to make this video, I did some research, and I also checked out the definition of what it means, the difference between immoral and amoral, which I will delve into more as we go on in the video. And I think an excellent example of how deeply ingrained immorality has become is to look at the old label of the moral majority. That used to be the label of people who were self-righteous and said that they stood up for American values. And if you look a little deeply at what their motivations were, they had some very sort of immoral motivations. And the whole moral majority movement was sort of a scam in itself. So let's start out by talking about what the definition of morality is, at least the standard definition of morality. And that means the ability to distinguish between what is right and what is wrong, or you could say what is good and what is evil. And a person who is amoral doesn't consider morality in their decision process at all, which is the people who look at life as predator versus prey. And an immoral decision then is made at the expense of the many to benefit the few, as I gave the example a few minutes ago, of cutting healthcare for millions to benefit the ultra wealthy. And I think it's also important to realize that given the complexity of society today, that standard definition of morality, being able to distinguish between right and wrong and good and evil, is not the only definition of morality. You have to consider the fact that there are some gray areas. The complexity of today's society doesn't really make it possible for you to just look at everything in terms of black and white. Sometimes there are nuances and shades of gray that must be considered when making a decision, where, in other words, a decision that benefits many, many people but disadvantages a few can still be considered a moral decision, but it's not completely 100% black and white. There could be some people who could be disadvantaged by your decision, but then the benefit for the many outweighs the disadvantage of the few. So, of course, my research on this topic also included looking at the opinions of people in academia and how they view morality in today's society. And I was able to find a number of sources. The first example I found is a University of Virginia sociologist named James Davison Hunter. And he said, morality matters because most people, when they are genuinely honest with themselves, associate doing well in life with being a good person. Having moral character is still essential to most people's conceptions of what makes a person flourish in his or her life. He goes on to say that most people would not want to live in a society in which morality was unimportant. And if you think about that, how true is that statement? If everybody suddenly decided that morality is not important, then we cease to function as a society. And if you think about it, an amoral person would regularly make immoral decisions and not think twice about it, not consider the consequences of it all, consider it only how it advantages them, how it benefits them, without considering at all how it might disadvantage others. Now, of course, we can debate as to how deeply immorality or immoral behavior on a regular basis has penetrated society. You know, who's in control? Are those who are the immoral in control, or are the moral in control? Certainly, if you want to just look at the leadership of this country, you would have to believe that the immoral are in control. But it's certainly true also that the immoral have not given up. So moving on now to another statement made by a professor or moral philosopher named Scott Ray. He has a book called An Introduction to Ethics, and there's a quote from his book that I copied and pasted here that says, "We want character, but without unyielding conviction. We want strong morality, but without the emotional burden of guilt and shame. We want virtue, but without particular moral justifications that invariably offend. We want good without having to name evil. We want decency without the authority to insist on it. We want moral community without any limitations to personal freedom." So listen to that statement. We want it both ways. You can't have it both ways. You're either going to decide to be moral or be morally compromised in almost everything that you do. You can't have it both ways. And this is the central problem. I think this is a very powerful statement that he's made. This is the central problem that we tackle every single day. We watch people around us make immoral decisions that affect our lives. And then we wonder whether or not it's worth it for us to keep on being moral. But the fact that we have the ability to distinguish between what's right and what's wrong stops us from going over to the dark side, say, and we stay in the light of morality. And then if you move on to the third source I found, a gentleman named Dr. Tim Dean, he has a paper, and I took a quote from it that says, "The most dangerous people in the world are not those with weak moral views. The most dangerous ones are those who have unwavering moral convictions. They are the ones who see the world strictly in terms of black and white, as if they are in a war between good and evil. They are the ones who are willing to kill or die to bring about their vision of utopia." And that has a dark side, particularly in its power to inspire rigid black and white thinking. And it's not just extremists who think this way. We are all susceptible to it. The thing is, it's not easy to change the way we think about morality. It turns out that in our very nature, we are wired to think about things in black and white terms. And that is part of what holds people back, what holds our society back. And that's why I said before that there has to be some consideration of gray areas in order to move forward as a society. Yes, it's just like if you think about, I forget where I found this source, but people say, why does evil exist in the world? Okay. Well, if evil didn't exist, we wouldn't know what good is. That's the justification that I hear for that many times. Now, whether or not that's particularly exactly true, I'm not sure, but I think that's a valid point. In order for us to understand and experience what is good in life, we have to understand what is bad, what is the evil that exists. And that's the way that we are able to then morally decide to uphold the good and reject the evil. So then after reading all of this and considering the viewpoints of these gentlemen, the next question that comes up in my mind is, how are morality and self-respect related? How does the morality that you choose for yourself affect your sense of self-respect? So I did a search on that, and I came up with some results that I consider to be valid, not necessarily credited to anybody, okay? Sort of like just a table that they put up there on the Google search results. And the first, it's sort of like back and forth between the relationship between morality and self respect. How morality builds self respect. First of all, it affirms your worth. You act according to your values and shows that you believe in them, which validates your own sense of inner worth and dignity. You create integrity in the world by living according to your principles and taking actions that are aligned with your beliefs. And you foster your own autonomy by upholding your own, sense of self-worth and your own sense of morality. Okay, it reinforces your sense of freedom and self-governance. Then if you look at it from the other side, how self-respect drives morality, okay, you demand to be treated well by others. If you're going to follow the golden rule and treat people the way you want to be treated, then you expect that to be reciprocated. You want other people to treat you the exact same way as the method that you choose to treat people. Self-respect also promotes responsibility. You understand your own rights and you promote a balance between the care of yourself and the care of others. You weigh others when make your decisions, which is one of the definitions that I gave in the beginning of this video for morality itself. And then, of course, having a sense of self-respect also drives your need to improve, which is a sense of humility. In other words, you recognize that you're not perfect, that there's always room for improvement, and as you strive to improve on a daily basis, you acknowledge your own flaws, you impose some self-discipline on yourself, and that means that generally speaking, you're going to strive to be the best person you can be, which would mean incorporating morality into your daily behavior. So then the final piece of research that I did was the connection between the need to be do self-examination and morality, and as a result of their self-examination to behave in moral fashion, and the connection with that to self-esteem. So there is a real benefit then to being a moral person, not just economic. Okay, there's also a mental health benefit to being a moral person. If you see yourself as moral and you have a high sense of self-esteem as a result, your mental health is far better, which probably translates into better physical health as well. And I know there are people out there who will interpret the need to be moral with weakness, as if to say that you're not with it enough. You don't understand the need to advance yourself if you're considering others. You're weak, in other words. And I think that is a huge, huge misconception, because real strength is derived, in my opinion, from the ability to consider others in your decisions and possibly sacrifice something of yours for the good of other people. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to live that way like Mother Teresa. You know what I mean? I don't think that's necessarily that level of sacrifice is necessary. But there are some things that are necessary, compromises that must be made in order to benefit the good of others and make decisions that are the best for everyone concerned, and then allow for the consequences of that to affect you, and without that effect being negative upon yourself. You can draw some pride and some self-respect from the fact that you have acted for the good of others. And you may draw the scorn of people, of the people who look at life as the game of predator versus prey, but that their opinion of you should not enter into your decision-making process, or nor should it let it affect your own perception of yourself. If you have the consciousness and the wherewithal to consider other people in your decisions and live with the consequences of your decision to benefit yourself, and if you view your life as something more than just the accumulation of wealth, then you have a greater sense of strength than anyone who plays the predator versus prey game. And you will automatically be fostering a greater sense of self-esteem within yourself on a regular basis. Now, I've always said that the biggest problem in the world is lack of self-respect. So if you are able to forge a path for yourself where you can incorporate a morality into your daily behavior and stick to it, no matter the consequences, which should actually produce a good life for you, since you are among the majority of the opinions out there, even though immorality seems to be playing a big part in our society today. So I know I've covered a lot of ground in this video today, and I had to make a lot of edits to do it, but I hope that this message gets through to you, because it's very easy to despair in the face of the immorality which is thrown at us every day. And I, for one, am not compromising my principles. I believe that morality is still the way to go. And I believe that a good sense of morality fosters a good sense of self-respect, which allows you to have peace of mind. You don't have to feel guilty or ashamed of yourself for making a certain decision that you know in your heart and soul is wrong. And I think that's very, very important to preserve your own sense of calm and self-respect and inner peace. Because you can't imagine yourself letting yourself slip on that on a regular basis. That's a slippery slope. Once you start down that, boom, it's very, very easy to just slip into a continual pool of guilt and shame, because you know you're making the wrong decisions, and nobody really wants to live that way. If you're a moral person and forced to behave in immoral fashion, no one wants to live that way. So stick to your principles and be a moral person and benefit others as much as you can. And I believe in the end that morality will win out. I thank you very much for listening. I hope everyone has enjoyed this video and the point that I'm trying to make and considers it important. Like, comment, and subscribe. I'm always open to hear feedback from my listeners.